We're here. The 2026 NFL Draft is just 4 days away, and it's time for my ultimate mock draft. What's up, guys? Hello to Footballtalk here, coming out of my bunker over the last couple of months, grinding through tape of somewhere between 300 and 350 prospects, and I have a ton of scouting reports with the top 10 lists at every position over on my site hellotofootballtalk.com. But today it's all about the first round, the creme de la creme, in a class that generally has been labeled as a down year, yet they went on to shatter all kinds of records at the combine. There are some pretty unique players, and we don't really know what's going to happen after pick 1. That's what I'll try to sort out today in a predictive exercise, projecting all 32 selections with some fun trades and discussions. And I didn't forget about the fans of teams that currently don't own a first round pick. I'll make one selection for each of those at the end. Just real quick, if you enjoy the analysis and want to see more of my content, since I'll actually have my annual 8-part divisional draft and roster review series starting up not too late after this, why don't you leave a like and hit the bell? Would really appreciate that. And now let's get into it. No need to waste anyone's time here at the top. Pretty much since he won the Heisman Trophy and then went on to lead the Indiana Hoosiers to the first ever national championship, undefeated, we knew this was going to be Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback from Indiana, for the Las Vegas Raiders. Not where I expected us to land if you had asked me back in August, when I projected them to be kind of a plucky team after trading for Geno Smith and some of the pieces they had in place around him already. But the young offensive linemen took a step back rather than forwards. They couldn't run the ball to save their lives. Max Crosby missed some time, who might be back after all now, and without his impact, it allowed the cracks in the back 7 to show. So Vegas has some work to do after this, but Mendoza is worthy of going here. Tall, old-school pocket passer who has every blade of grass available to him, willing to stand strong in the face of pressure, and he's sneaky effective as a runner with those long strides and how tough he is fighting for key yardage. The question will be how quickly he can acclimate to this Clint Kubiak offense with the insane amount of RPOs they ran in Indiana, how simplified things were with reading one key defender, and now being asked to execute these underhands at true dropbacks. So I think we will see Kirk Cousins for a little bit at least, but in terms of skill sets, throwing the ball off bootlegs and attacking down the field, he does fit very well. And then of course this guy's consistently elevated his level of play in the biggest games in the moment he's needed most. We're already reaching a key point here, second overall. I won't rule out the Jets move down for the right offer, and we shouldn't lean too much into which players fit head coach Aaron Glenn, since he's largely back just because they didn't want to pay him not to work. But I think they'll simply go with the best player available here on the board, and I believe it's Alvaro Reese, the edge/linebacker out of Ohio State. Looking at the betting markets, Texas Tech's David Bailey shortly overtook Reese as the favorite here, as more of that traditional speed-based pass rusher, while I believe today Reese's best spot actually is off-ball linebacker. Nonetheless, I think he's a better player at both spots long term. This guy brings a level of violence that's rare for 240 pounds, stands up and tosses aside tight ends regularly, showed plenty of growth in his diagnostic skills this past season, tremendous agility and balance to finish tackles in more extended space. There are simply things he needs to work on wherever New York wants to line him up, because his experience is limited. If used on the edge, he needs to do a better job of keeping his outside arm free. His instincts in coverage are still developing, but there are no restrictions when it comes to his movement skills, and his pass rush toolbox is limited at this point, but his explosion of the ball and the quickness to jump inside of tackles stands out. His closing burst already makes him an awesome spy, and as he becomes more comfortable within the scheme, he could be a threat to blitz from various angles, and now he gets to learn from a stalwart in Devero Davis back in the Big Apple. And this brings us to our first blockbuster trade. I don't know if there's one player Arizona would just be willing to stick and pick here. They probably want to go O-line, but not sure if there's a guy quite worth it. So now Jerry Jones is on the phone, offering picks 12 and one of the 2 first rounders in 2027, when the Cardinals probably want to add that extra capital to get the quarterback of the future, along with one of the 2 5th round comp picks to go up for David Bailey, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech, who I'm personally a little lower on, as I already kind of hinted at. He's committed to contributing against the run, actively working off contact, but he simply lacks the base strength and ability to play consistently with extension as he's setting the edge. And as a pass rusher, he simply doesn't have the true bend or power to corner through contact super effectively. Nonetheless, he has big time juice off the ball, enough mobility in his ankles to win around the arc if he defeats the outside hand. And he's become better at realizing when he has guys in vulnerable positions, losing the balance so he can attack the frame and creates off the edges for himself. The Cowboys defense has a lot of things to clean up, but I do believe he understands that they can't win without a number 1 pass rusher to close out games when their offense is capable of putting up points, after trading away Micah Parsons on the eve of the 2025 season. At pick number 4 now, and I'll be pulling my hair out if I projected the Cowboys to trade up, but not for the guy I initially had in mind, since I instead had them going to Tennessee and that is Sonny Styles, the off-ball linebacker from Ohio State. The Titans have been connected to Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love for a couple of months now, and that could absolutely be the call here for a team with last year's first overall pick Cam Ward, having very little around him among his skill position group. But Robert Saleh wants to mold the team in his vision, and the Ohio State linebacker would be an extension of the head coach right in the middle of that defense. I personally don't love the Fred Warner comp that I've seen a bunch of people throw out there, because what makes Fred so special as a unicorn at this position are the incredible instincts and intelligence. Styles, on the other hand, only actually played as an inside backer for one season, but showed massive strides in his processing ability between the tackles and his tackling already. Plus, of course, he's one of the freakiest athletes ever, looking at the range with that 81-inch wingspan, but also the 4.46 speed. He's immediately an upgrade over anyone they have on the depth chart. He can clean up the mess created up front by Jeffrey Simmons, and functions as the connective tissue to the third level with the presence he brings in coverage. I've shaken things up with picks 3 and 4 here, but I'll stick with Carnell Tate, the wide receiver from Ohio State, going to the New York Giants at 5th overall, which they'll be back on the clock in 5 picks already, and we'll get to that in a second here. But I absolutely love this fit with Malik Neighbors, who is capable of lining up wide and winning his matchups, but to maximize what he's capable of, you want to move him around, give him those free releases and designated touches. Tate can line up as the X or the Z. I know he ran a 4.53 at the combine, but you constantly saw him get him. But I absolutely love this fit with Malik Neighbors, who's capable of just lining up out wide and winning his matchups. But to maximize what he's capable of, you want to move him around, give him those free releases and designated touches. Tate can line up at the X or the Z. I know he ran a 4.53 at the combine, but you constantly saw him get on top of the defense on these deep post routes and double moves down the field. He needs to get a little bit stronger because he's more upright in his posture if you put him on the line and ask him to defeat press, but I've called him a craftsman as a route runner with all the little details you see during the stem and at the break point. He didn't drop any of the 51 passes that hit his hands last season, shows these acrobatic adjustments that allow him to go 12 of 14 in contested catch situations last season, and having trained under the premier wide receiver developer in Brian Hartline, he's even talked about how he already worked on keeping both feet in bounds at the sideline, getting ready for Sundays. The one thing missing in his profile is run after catch creation, but that's what they have Malik for, and Tate gives Jackson Dart that tall target to throw the ball up to when he gets into creation mode. Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns, and I have them going with Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. I've had them going O-line here pretty much the whole way, and I won't move off that, even though it's certainly a possibility. We've heard reports about them being willing to move down for the right offer. Freeling is not quite my top-ranked tackle, but he's the type of high-ceiling talent the NFL loves. Only a one-year starter with the Bulldogs, and there are certainly things he still needs to clean up. Because he's over 6'7", he tends to get top-heavy in the run game, where savvy defenders will be able to pull him off. He presents opportunities to blow through his inside shoulder, and the way I put it in my scouting report, he needs to diversify his hand usage to keep edge rushers guessing. Nonetheless, his ability to roll his hips into contact as a run blocker, the mobility to fly out in space, the 85-inch wingspan to expand his range, and his ability to transfer into the ground in order to absorb force as a pass protector are simple things you can't teach. Cleveland basically let their entire starting O-line from last season walk, other than DeJuan Jones, whose natural spot is at right tackle. They did take some mid-level gambles on the interior, but now this should allow them to get their best 5 guys out there in the right composition. Now to number 7, and this is where we get to Jeremiah Love, the running back of Notre Dame, going to the Washington Commanders. Again, I could easily see the Titans take him at number 4, and I'm not saying Washington is that much more well equipped to fully maximize his impact, because they showed us last season, when they tried to bring in a bunch of older veterans, that this roster still has a ways to go. But having Love next to Jaden Daniels in the backfield gives them one truly scary element on the team. Those two running any type of zone read, and just how they can win the numbers game on the ground, when now you afford one of these dynamic ball carrier space, that's really enticing. Love his lightning quick feet, that more narrow build allows him to get super skinny through creases, has big time acceleration and long speeds to beat a home run hitter, but also the balance to stay alive when caught in awkward positions and churn out tough yardage. Plus you're basically putting an extra receiver out there on the field with how easy he gets in and out of his cuts, how natural his hands are, and how comfortable he's lining up anywhere across the formation. General manager Adam Peters understands the value of a running back of this mold coming over from San Francisco, and he can take hits off Jaden because he's not the best check down option himself anymore. And now, as we'll get to the New Orleans Saints at number 8, we'll do something very similar to 3 years ago, when Monty Austin-Ford ran the Cardinals draft for the first time as GM, as they previously traded down from number 3, but then back up into the top 10 for an offensive tackle. Moving up 4 spots here, in a swap 65 for 132, Paris Johnson back at that time, and now it's gonna be Francis Marinoa, the offensive tackle out of Miami. And he is my OT1 by a fairly small margin, but even though his skill set should translate well to guard as well, he does cross that 33-inch benchmark for arm length. Really interesting backgrounds that you can read up on, including in my tackle rankings, having grown up in American Samoa, yet rapidly progressing and logging 42 career starts at right tackle for the Hurricanes. There are some technical nuances to clean up with him as a run blocker, but just so densely built and has enough short area agility to execute these backside scoops and wide zone that you're gonna see under Michael LaFleur. His elbows can get pretty high and wide as a pass protector, which presents off the edges to his frame, but the purpose of and the balance in his movements last season took a big jump, already throws a rusher by flashing the outside hand, and is some of the best stopping power against the bull rush as you're going to see. Now Arizona has him and Paris as their bookends for whether they bring in a quarterback this or next year, when you have that extra first rounder now in this scenario. Bringing us to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 9, who may never end up picking this high again for as long as they have a healthy Patrick Mahomes. And after going tackle late in the first round a year ago, they may go back to the well here if someone like Marinoa were available to them, but they also need help on the edge defensively, and there's one borderline blue chip player available still for them here, and that is Ruben Bain Jr., the edge defender out of Miami. I'm not going to further address the incident 2 years ago, where a young woman was involved in a car crash that later tragically led to her passing away. All charges were dropped, the family has said that they wish Bain all the best, and NFL teams have done all the homework. I won't be so tasteless to make any jokes about Kansas City being drawn to players with reckless driving habits, but clearly Andy Reid and company have been more willing to overlook some potential off-field concerns if they believe in the person. Bain is my number 4 overall prospect. The one on-field concern about his profile, of course, are the 31-inch arms. However, that just never really showed up on the field. Incredibly violent with his hands to swing things in his favor, rocks back the paths of offensive linemen in the run game, and I thought his awareness for blocking schemes was a major plus. As a pass rusher, he shows tremendous bend, fluidity to link his arms and hips, and he constantly shortens the path to the quarterback for himself with power, and then yanking cloth when he catches tackles leaning. None of Casey's recent draft picks have truly emerged, and now George Karlaftis is more of the Robin that he should be to Bain's Batman. This of course is where we get to the news of a blockbuster trade of Dexter Lawrence going to the Bengals for the 10th overall pick, when I was all ready to record this, and it could have easily thrown everything off, but I actually stuck with the same player here that I had originally, not only because it was easier that way, but I also think it makes a lot of sense, and that is Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State. My number 1 overall prospect on the big board now going to the Giants. This guy came to Alabama as a true freshman 3 years ago, and Nick Saban immediately trusted him to become a key cog for them on the back end, where he regularly operated as more of the traditional deep post safety. Then he goes to Ohio State for the last 2 years, is a revered team captain for both, lines up basically everywhere in the back 7, and seemingly never misses an assignment. Maybe he's only plus rather than an elite athlete, to where you'd ask him to match number 1 receivers being put in the slot. His arms are fairly short if you asked him to take on bigger bodies inside the box, but the way he sees and processes the game is as good as I've seen from a safety that I've studied since Minkah Fitzpatrick, who also started his career at Alabama. Sorts through the trash incredibly well, steps down and hits with a purpose. In coverage, there's rarely any wasted movements. He wants to decapitate receivers going in the middle of the field as a robber, or driving up in quarters, and constantly limits the potential for yards after catch. Cincinnati could have certainly used him as well, after having some of the worst safety play in the league over the last couple of years. But new Giants head coach John Harbaugh clearly is aware of the effect of an uber-smart and instinctive safety with his years in Baltimore. Tyler Nubin, Jawan Holland, or Downs himself are all capable of playing the slots when you want to put them all 3 on the field together, and this is a culture changer type of player. Moving out of the top 10 now, we have a team in the Miami Dolphins in a massive rebuild who simply need to find good football players, but also don't need them to necessarily be at their best this season. So I thought they were a perfect landing spot for Jamar McCoy, the cornerback out of Tennessee, whose tape in 2024 is so good that he should be in consideration to be selected anywhere from pick 5 onwards, but missed all of last season with a torn ACL and then didn't do any football specific movements in front of NFL evaluators until running around a 4-4 flat at the Tennessee Pro Day a couple of weeks ago. His hands-on style and press man coverage can get him in trouble at times, but he also regularly mitigates those advantages. Receivers try to gain on him on the releases. He has the wheels to run stride for stride with legit speeds on the outside, and he has exceptional ball skills to high punt the football in the air when he has chances to turn and look back for it. He operates with good eye balance in zone coverage, although he should work on utilizing his arm length to maintain vision through blocks. He did much better already as a true sophomore of staying on his feet as a tackler. Storm Duck, Jason Marshall Jr., Juju Brents, Daryl Baker Jr., Marco Wilson. McCoy is a massive upgrade over any of these guys and gives new head coach Jeff Hafley a legit CB1, which he was kind of missing in Green Bay as well, for how much they want to live in some coverage, because he can be that guy isolated on the backside. And we're not allowing the other top corner to last any longer here, as the New Orleans Saints stay in state with Mansell Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. Which again, McCoy's flashes of his potential in 2024 were crazy, but if you look at Delane's 2025 tape from start to end, it's about as clean as you're going to find. Well below 5 yards per target, less than half a yard per coverage snap, and a passer rating of just 31.3 when targeted, while also only being penalized once. Has tremendous balance for all those soft press assignments to stay square, not afraid of getting run by, really oily hips, and super sticky throughout the rep. You'd like to see a little bit better route squeeze in zone/match assignments where he's playing off and outside, but shows excellent understanding for how to adjust his spacing, and although he's not the most physical guy, he's been a solid tackler with a career miss rate a little over 10%. New Orleans has traded Marshall Lattimore, let Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor walk into free-agency, all within the last 1.5 years. They like Khalid McKinstry and Quincy Riley, but Delane can be their number one and help everyone slot into their more fitting roles. They could easily go wide receiver here to help jumpstart Tyler Shuck's sophomore campaign, but they go with a cleaner prospect than the ones that would be available here, as Callantair was already off the board when they originally were on the clock at pick 8. Which brings us to the pick the Rams got back from the Falcons last year, when they massively overpaid in terms of pure value of draft capital, to select James Pierce Jr., regardless of his future due to the off-field circumstances, and after their starting right tackle just medically retired, they could have very much used this selection themselves. Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle / interior offensive lineman if you want to call it that, at Utah, which the Rams also just watched their starter at that spot in Rob Havenstein hang up his cleats. Warren McClendon filled in pretty admirably after the first month of last season, but he struggled during the playoffs and will be entering the final year of his rookie deal. Fano could either push him to swing tackle again, or as he showed when staying longer after his combine workout to snap the ball, might also compete for the starting gig at center. He clearly has the movement skills to do so, and can be that enabler, so LA puts the best 5-man combination out there. What I absolutely love about Fano are the lateral movement skills and overall fluidity. He's a little tall into contact, especially as a puller, but gets after it in the run game, smoothly glides up to the second level, and can get to those extended landmarks. He can end up leaning against speed off the edge and overcommit his shoulders, which makes him vulnerable to inside counters out of tackle, but he's really skilled with his hands, glides side to side to mirror twist action, and looks for knockout blows against nearby rushers if left unoccupied. Could certainly see the Rams go pass catcher here as well though. But we'll stick with the O-line, because the Baltimore Ravens have just lost some of their ground and pound identity recently, and especially after choosing not to match the high price tag of center Tyler Linderbaum, are more vulnerable on the interior altogether now, which is why I have them going with Wenga Ione, the interior offensive lineman out of Penn State. Looks like he was built in a lab to play guard at 6'4", 320 pounds, with great thickness throughout the frame. He's a maul in the run game who could dig defensive linemen out of the gaps, but the main concept he ran at Penn State was actually outside zone. There's a bit of a wind-up of his arms at times, and I wouldn't ask him to come to balance of longer ventures necessarily, but he should fit just fine with what Declan Dole coming over from Chicago wants to do. And he's a wall and pass protection with good contact balance, but also dishes out plenty with active hands and the ability to shut down twists single-handedly as he makes rushers collide. Optimally, Wenger will give you some center flexibility, but bringing back John Simpson now after a one-year stint with the Jets, that is a big guard duo to pave the way for Derrick Henry and to give Lamar a firm interior of the pocket to step up into. It's a bit of a layup because you see it in like half the mock drafts out there right now, but it just makes way too much sense, especially if you don't love the guy I have going next year. At pick 15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. Is it the biggest need? No. The defense has been on a pretty steady decline due to how vulnerable they've become on the second level in coverage, the fact they don't have that one true edge rusher they can rely upon. So I could easily see them move back if given the chance and address either one of those positions, and they did re-sign Kate Otten to a 3-year, $30 million deal. But I can also easily envision Zach Robinson coming over from Atlanta, where he had this type of freakish athlete in Kyle Pitts, and follow his mentor Sean McVay that has transitioned towards all of these multi-tight end sets. where Otton is the guy in line, and it frees them up to move Sadiq around as a matchup piece, because he is on the short end of the spectrum, who looks more like a defensive lineman if you ask him to put his hand in the dirt, but he's a good movement blocker in space. And then of course his combination of 4.39 speed and incredible vertical prowess makes him a demon running up the seam. His route tree was pretty limited at Oregon, but using him on his run-throughs, getting some design touches going with his run-after-catch skills, maybe he can develop into the type of player who can line up as the de facto X in a 3x1 and force defenses to clear early as well. And we'll go with another former Duck here, could easily be another pass catcher for the New York Jets after starting with defense in Alvaro Reese at number 2, but this was the first team in NFL history to not record a single interception last season. They really need someone like Dylan Feeneman, the safety from Oregon, who has started all 39 games since he came to Purdue 3 years ago, where he was more of that classic center fielding free safety, and immediately came up with 6 interceptions as a true freshman, before taking on a more multifaceted role in Eugene this past season. Superb athlete, looking at all the testing metrics from the combine, and watching him move around the field, but more than willing to play closer to the line of scrimmage, closes down space from depth in a hurry, gathers and re-accelerates his feet in order to shut down the ball carrier on the perimeter. He displays excellent field vision awareness for route development, to where Oregon regularly deployed him as that mid-read player stepping down in cover 2 to make that area of the field unattractive for quarterbacks. Clearly has the fluidity and speed to match with different body types in the slot, but it took until year 3 to really see him take on his duties to any extensive capacity, and I'd rather allow him to roam and make plays on the football, which makes sense because they brought over Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in a mid-season trade, who was one of the few bright spots, and they signed Minka Fitzpatrick this offseason, who at this point is better playing down low than high. Another fit I've had in the last couple of mock drafts I've thrown out there, I believe, and there seems to be a lot of noise around, is Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle from Alabama, going to the Detroit Lions at 17th overall. Quite the divisive prospect, who some people have as one of the top 3 tackles. I just don't really know what to do with him. Reportedly playing at close to 380 pounds, then shed about 30 of those at the combine, moved around well to be honest, but certainly has some things he needs to clean up. When he's connected and centers his blocks in the run game, he shows flashes of being that rogue grader that you'd expect, but he's a little inconsistent at this point. Being 6'6.5" leads to him losing the leverage for the most part, and you don't love him having to collect that mass in space. Right now he leans and hugs rushers a lot in pass pro. He can take the fight to those guys and really engulf them at times, but on other reps he's slow to respond to inside counters and doesn't always protect his frame. It's a long track to get around this guy. He can absorb speed to power, and for a man to carry this type of weight the way he does, the fact they put the ball in his hands because he's such a rare athlete, it just screams Dan Campbell to me. They've said that the plan was to move Penei Sewell over to the left side, but I just kind of feel this one coming, and now you'd keep him at the spot that he's already a first-team All-Pro at. So the player that has been mocked to the Vikings numerous times at 18th overall is Oregon safety Dylan Feeneman, and he's already off the board in this case, and there's no single player that they really need to prioritize here. Instead, with them not having a pick between 97 and 163, they add one more from the Steelers, who have a couple of spare threes in that range, moving up 3 spots in exchange for pick 99. Basically perfect match with the classic Jimmy Johnson value chart, by the way, even if that's of course a little outdated, but Pittsburgh adds the type of wide receiver they really need in Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. My wide receiver 1 purely based on tape, but of course has that extensive injury history, missing multiple games in 3 straight years due to his knee, collarbone and hamstrings at different points. But I just watched the way he moves, and it looks like a Justin Jefferson and guys in that mold who can disengage your upper and lower half, use his integrated movements to separate one-on-one with false indicators, is incredibly elusive to avoid getting hung up with ancillary zone defenders, and he completely erased concerns about focus drops in 2025. Consistently plays above his height in contested situations, never seems to get tackled by the first guy, and has impressive vision after the grab. He can get bumped a little bit too much near the top of the route maybe, and he needs to do a better job protecting the football, but that's about it. People coming out all of a sudden saying he's soft just need to go back to the Texas Tech game this last year and watch him carry that offense late, on one leg basically. Or for the Steelers, they can just talk to Hines Ward, who they're quite familiar with, who was coaching with Arizona State and said he's one of the best talents in this draft. No idea if Aaron Rodgers is back, but now DK Metcalf can be more of that pure vertical stretch player, rather than someone you rely upon as your primary. Michael Pittman Jr. as your power slots when you go to 11 personnel. I'm liking the construction of this room a lot better suddenly. There's a ton of smoke around Tyson right now, and he could easily be the player the Giants target with the 10th overall pick now, if they start on defense. After reports about the GM having dinner with Tyson before his private workout on Friday, and he's absolutely worth it based on the talent to me, but the noise is almost too loud now. Next up, the Carolina Panthers. Could certainly go defense here if the board falls to them that way, and they may be a sneaky tackle team as well, but they invested a lot of money into the other side of the ball last offseason and could still use one more piece to complement the receiving corps, and that is Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver of Indiana, going to the Panthers at 19th overall. I know this would mean that they've gone with that position in the first round for 3 straight years, probably regretting trading back in for Xavier Legette, but then finding a true alpha number 1 and offensive rookie of the year Tetro McMillan. If you throw in Jalen Coker as more of a Z slot flex player, I love the way Cooper matches with that, thinking about all the RPOs the Panthers like to run, very reminiscent of what the Hoosiers did with him, spitting the ball out to him, and letting him create offense with the ball in his hands, with tremendous contact balance and body control to make tackles miss. Cooper is certainly more than that, really got unlocked on the inside this past season, where he can benefit from having room to build up speed quickly, roll off either foot, consistently trying to do his quarterback working against zone coverage, and plucks the ball away from his frame in challenging positions. You'd like to see a little more authority as a blocker, but he's constantly going to be tagged with bubbles, glance route, etc. as part of the run game anyway, so I'm not really worried about that. And we'll keep the wide receiver run going, but now with the Cowboys, who may want to get some value back here, and looking ahead, shouldn't be too worried about the teams before they're actually on the clock, sniping them for the player I believe they'll have their eyes on. As the Browns move up 4 spots here, in return for dropping down from 70 to 92 in the 3rd round, in order to select Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver from USC, a team whose top pass catcher right now is second-year tight end Harold Fannin Jr., and he's best utilized as an H-back or detached from the formation as well, while Lemon is primarily a slot receiver. Nonetheless, even though they hope Cedric Tillman can finally become that more reliable, outside the numbers, primary X receiver, nothing about the names they already have in place would make me pause about bringing in a player like Lemon. I actually have him behind Cooper personally, because I believe the run after catch skills aren't quite as dynamic, but he did plenty of damage last season at USC with the ball, and he was shockingly effective deep, hauling in 16 of 24 targets of 20 plus air yards for well over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. You'd like to have a little more catch radius on paper, but he's so compactly built that you're not going to bump him off his route typically, lightning quick feet in short areas, not a lot of experience against press so far, but high football IQ player who finds soft spots in zone coverage, works towards green grass on the secondary routes, and he just catches everything in his vicinity. The type of target Shedeur Sanders can certainly benefit from, and however they might bring in next April. Bringing us to the pick the Steelers sent to Minnesota in this scenario, who want to accumulate more draft capital, since they may be targeting one of the perceived lower value positions on defense, either safety or in this case interior defensive line, at 21st overall with Caden McDonald, the interior D lineman out of Ohio State. Could they go with the last of what are perceived as the big 3 safeties here in Toledo's Emmanuel McNeil-Warren? Sure, but after releasing both Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, both after just 1 season, now you're suddenly looking at a couple of splash rotational players from last year to take on larger roles that they may not be quite suited for. And Levi Drake Rodriguez isn't the natural fit at nose. McDonald immediately upgrades that entire group, and the way I described it in my scouting report is that he's a math changer for a defense because of the way he occupies bodies and allows his teammates to run freely. When his pad level is right, the way he can stand up and toss aside single blockers, play the peek and shed technique, anchor against combo blocks, but also succeed attacking the gap as a shade, and shows excellent processing skills to work over the top of blocks. He doesn't give you a whole lot in terms of attacking the edges of interior pass protectors, throwing different moves at them, and turning tight corners, but he can remove the hands, work the depth of the pocket, and he may be the best guy in this class at pulling line with him as the setup man on twists. Loved it for a Brian Flores defense that just continues to reinvent itself. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers, the 22nd overall, and I have them going with Akeem Mesidor, the edge from Miami. The 2 positions they absolutely have to address are offensive guard and edge defensively. They brought back Khalil Mack on another 1-year deal, but now at 45 years old, you want to limit his snaps to some degree. Tuli Tuipulotu can be a big piece of your front, but otherwise you're looking for someone in last year's 4th round pick, Cal Kennard, or veteran Bud Dupree, to be that number 3 for you. Already being 25 years old, with the 6th-year breakout, and how much higher he can rise. I understand why some teams may not view him this way, but there's also context needed about how he was primarily an interior player early in his career, missed basically a full season, and then was a monster this past year. Mesidor is explosive into contact, with the strength to set a firm edge against the run, and he clearly rushes the passer with a plan when you look at how he sets up moves throughout matchups. He has a couple of really nice swipes to win outside with great ankle flexibility, punishes tackles for oversetting with the short area quickness, and then he can complete that by threatening inside on like a Eurostep move. Orty was really effective on stunts and loops in Miami, and I think they could do some really fun stuff, putting him and Thule on the same side, with both having that inside-out versatility. Bringing us to the Philadelphia Eagles, 24th overall, going back to the roots, with Maxi Hanichor, the offensive tackle out of Arizona State. And no long-term stalwart offensive line coach Steph Stoutland's gone, and there's some things to hash out about how responsibilities are divided/shared, but GM Howie Roseman won't be able to pass on a talent like this at tackle. Lane Johnson reportedly was already contemplating retirement, and misses a couple of games pretty much every year anyway, so Max should compete with Tyler Steen at right guard, and if you give him a year to learn the double under technique that Lane has perfected, where his core is also strong enough to almost catch pass rushers when they try to angle through him, you watch the mirror skills against in and out moves, and now it's just about not carrying his outside hand low to where opponents can dip around him. His footwork and how he ducks his head at times limits how much displacement he can provide in the run game, but you just don't find a lot of 320 plus pound athletes this loose who can peel off combos inside suddenness and pull out to the corner on toss plays. Considering Iheanacho didn't even play football until he went to junior college, and how good he is already, there's a world where Philly has all pro level play at right tackle for another 8 years or so. Staying in the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys, after trading back from 20, probably not seeing these last 3 teams as major threats to snipe the guy, which I believe will be CJ Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia. As I already hinted at, I was going back and forth about who Dallas was trading up for at pick number 3, between the guy I actually went with in David Bailey, the edge out of Texas Tech, and Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles, but they end up addressing both positions here, with top 3 players at each I believe, no matter how you classify Alvaro Reese. Now, CJ obviously isn't the type of athletic phenom as either one of those Ohio State guys, but when you listen to people around the Georgia program talk about him, the term coach on the field may be overused, but he by all indicators truly ran the show for them, and it takes a special dude for Kirby Smart to hand over those kind of responsibilities to. Tremendous at sorting through the trash, with the contact balance and block deconstruction skills to excel in congested areas. Maybe not as explosive in his change of direction, but reportedly ran sub 4.5 at his pro day, finished his career with a missed tackle rate of just 7.4%, and he was involved in a variety of blitz packages and games, where he's reminiscent of another former Bulldog backer in a Kobe Dean, who will just run through the face of a running back in protection. Him and DeMarvion Overshone could suddenly be a really fun tandem after how much Dallas has struggled in that area, because Allen demands greatness. Already mentioned him as a potential fit for the Vikings after moving back, but now another NFC North team in the Chicago Bears select Toledo safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren 25th overall. They basically swapped out Jaquan Brisker for Kobe Bryant, who's more of a classic deep safety, even as a converted corner, but who should more often than not go to the high post when they rotate into single high at the snap, which is what Kevin Byard more regularly did, who's also gone now, and now EMW can be that hammer going downhill. He's really good at angling from split field looks to shut down perimeter runs, but dropping down into the box late, his vision, the aggression in the way he drops the shoulder into receivers trying to insert against him, and how he locates entry points as a tackler, that definitely stands out. He shows great feel for concepts developed in zone assignments, makes receivers earn catches as they try to curl up in front of him, and he can finish some tough catches for any DB. At Toledo, he'd regularly match up with slot receivers, using his hands and arm length well to feel things develop without getting grabby, and you really like his projection as a potential talent eraser, especially against the guys in the division. Reliable tackler with the way he slings his body around ball carriers at the last moment, missing just over 10% of his attempts in his career, and he has a knack for peanut punching the ball out with 9 career fumbles forced. Love this fit. Which brings us to an interesting scenario with the Bills here at 26, who haven't shied away from trading with one of the biggest rivals in past years. Thinking about the Chiefs moving up for Xavier Worthy a couple of years ago, because Brandon Beane is all about creating value in terms of draft capital, and this time it's the Patriots calling from within the AFC East, who want to move up 5 spots in exchange for pick 95, and again Buffalo opens the path for another team to go wide receiver in their place, with Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. I'm personally a little low on him than the universal love fest happening around him right now. He isn't particularly interested in the physical aspects of the game at college, blocking in the run game, having to fight through leverage, and those clap attack tendencies he showcased are worrisome going forward, with a drop rate of close to 10% for his career. Having said that, when A&M put more on his plate from a route running perspective than what was asked of him at NC State, he was an elite separator at the college level. Eats up cushions in a hurry, keeps defenders off balance with little stutters in man, widens windows for himself against zone with subtle adjustments, and can emphatically drop his hips at the break point to great separation. And then when the ball is in his hands, you see that punt return ability show up, where he can suddenly put on the brakes to make guys fly by, but also looks more like a running back, even deploying some balance touches to stay on his feet after pulling out of arm tackles. Nearly forced a missed tackle every fourth career touch, giving Drake May that type of player, with Keishawn Boutte and hopefully Kyle Williams creating space as vertical threats. Romeo Doubs is more of a possession-style receiver, having moved on from Stephon Diggs. I like how they all fit together now. A team that'll look to bolster the trenches on either side of the ball here. At 27 with the San Francisco 49ers, I went with Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle of Utah. Could easily see them go edge here, despite picking Michael Williams out of Georgia a year ago, just outside the top 10. But with some reports about left tackle Trent Williams wanting more money and entering his age 38 season either way, whether a contract dispute actually drags along and Lomu will step in right away during training camp at least, or he gets something done fairly soon here and he's your swing tackle with someone like Valerian Lowe, they should be able to feel better about where they're at. I wouldn't call him a natural fit at guard, but if he beats out Connor Colby to start next to Trent as a rookie, that's a nice bonus. And really it's all about how well Lomu fits with what Kyle Shanahan wants to do and the high potential that he offers. Certainly less of the two Utah tackles in terms of the impact in the run game, but he's a really fluid, well-coordinated move on zone concepts, who can absolutely execute those backside cutoffs, secure linebackers in a wide open space, and fly out on screens. I won't lie, he has some tendencies in pass pro that simply won't fly in the NFL, like punching first with his inside hand occasionally, dragging his cleats along, but you clearly see the quick feet to mirror, smoothly guide rushers along the arc, a redirect against counters. He puts himself into too many compromised positions currently, and he needs to continue to get stronger, but there are so many moments where he's able to recover anyway. And will stick a tackle, but a rather different type of profile for the Houston Texans at 28, and that is Blake Miller, the offensive tackle out of Clemson, who literally started all 54 games since becoming a Tiger as a 4-star recruit, almost exclusively on the right side. Just someone who's continuously showcased growth every year, adding functional mass. He already showed impressive understanding for angles and how adjustments in the run game can change on the fly at a young age, but his patience and anticipation as a pass protector, how quickly his eyes are to identify post-snap movements, and how he transitions that information to his feet. He operates with great sync in his hips and is just such an easy mover to hang on with rushers who throw a lot of different things at him. Other than making himself vulnerable to getting backdoored, but being overeager to beat linebackers to a spot, the only true concern is his play strength, where you see heavy-handed edge defenders win at the point of attack and gain control of the rep of the bull rush at times, leading into some push-pull moves. Nonetheless, he tested like an elite athlete, plug-and-play start at right tackle, where he did sign Braden Smith from win the division, but there's already been talk about him moving inside, and now with last year's second-rounder Arion Ursary, that could be quite a formidable young tandem for Houston. At 29 now, this is the pick the Chiefs acquired from the Rams in the Trent McDuffie trade. They went defense at 9 with Bain, and now they go offense with Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. Enough with all these small, fast guys on paper who can't really ever actually stack and get on top of defenders down the field and need to be given free access. Already connected Casey to Mike Evans in free agency, and I love this fit with a similar profile and a younger player who isn't getting enough love when you look at some of the other receivers projected to go in this range. Austin has that more traditional X size at 6'3 plus and 210 pounds, but I hope we've moved past the point where people just say he can't separate simply because he's a bigger guy. He's actually quite deceptive in his body language and step sequencing to keep press corners off balance. He really understands how to attack blind spots and is strong enough to play through holds. More of a wonky type of route runner without the twitch to dynamically snap guys off, and you don't see the type of make you miss ability after the catch, but he runs through the ball and is highly competitive to battle for extra yardage. Plus of course his hands are incredibly strong to secure off-target throws, and he consistently tilts 50-50 opportunities in his favor, securing 10 of 13 contested passes last season. You could argue receiver here at 30 for the Dolphins, with the second selection that they got back from Denver in the Jalen Waddle trade, but I'm going to have them double up on defense with Keldrick Falk, the edge defender out of Auburn. Another player where opinions seem to differ a lot, right around where I have him personally on my big board, because I believe he has a lot of talent to be successful from a variety of alignments, but I also understand questions about what he truly is. Falk supposedly played around 285 pounds, but had shed about 10 for his combine workouts. This was a Bruce Feldman's freaks list guy heading into last year, has like an 84-inch wingspan, lining up anywhere from a 3 to a 7 technique. Clearly has the length and strength to stand up offensive linemen, mirror the steps, but also turn his pads and chase down the line fast to slant. Wasn't afforded the luxury of rushing half the man a whole lot in passing situations, looping outside as a contained player routinely, but you do see the mobility in his ankles to flatten at the top of his rush. He can really stick his foot on the ground and cross the face of blockers, along with constantly shortening the arc for himself with the long arm. Limited change of direction skills, I would say, and will need to threaten the outside shoulder in a more meaningful way if he wants to be seen as a full-time player on the edge. He also won't even turn 21 until September, especially makes sense for Miami, who pretty much only have these small, speed rusher type profiles on the roster currently. These last two I absolutely love, not much to really go back and forth on, just reloading at key positions for them. First up with the Buffalo Bills after moving back, after them selecting Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard out of Oregon, my number 2 ranked interior lineman, and a seamless fit at left guard for a team that just lost David Edwards in free agency. Make it dinged a little bit for turning 25 midway through his rookie season, but COVID delayed his collegiate career as a super under-recruited guy coming to Wyoming, then was a freshman All-American when he did get that chance, and a first-team All-American this past year at Oregon. Has that really wide frame with almost no bad weight to it, maybe doesn't have the short area agility or loose lower half to be a perfect fit for an outside zone system, but that's not what you want to do in Buffalo anyway. Brings his hips and keeps working his feet to uproot defensive tackles on gap concepts, detonates some DNs on kickouts, and snatches up linebackers. In pass protection, he commits a little too much occasionally with slanting rushers and has to catch back up to someone looping behind, but operates with a flat back, highly active individual hand usage, and has 33.5-inch arms to control that space to either side of him, 0 sacks allowed in 2 years with USC, and then just 5 total pressures on nearly 500 pass blocking snaps in his 1 season with the Ducks. And to close out round 1, the Seattle Seahawks, reigning Super Bowl champions, select Colton Hoods, the cornerback out of Tennessee, known as the other volunteer corner, who actually didn't play with Jamal McCoy after transferring over this past season, as that guy missed the entire year, but Hood filled his shoes about as well as anyone could have ever imagined. So good at playing on the fringes of what's legal in press coverage, denying receivers the ability to stack him on vertical stems, and looks very comfortable looking back for the ball simultaneously with those guys on the field. He's more reserved, I would call it, in run support, where he's not throwing his body into the action, but he frequently disengages from blockers at the right moment, and was so much better at staying on his feet as a tackle last season. He's still learning the intricacies of zone coverage, but he's active, and had some nice moments fighting off one route to deny the ball being thrown over his head. Again, right there for me in terms of value, he immediately steps in for Rick Willen as that boundary corner, who they asked to crowd receivers on the backside of Mike McDonald's defense. Maybe Josh Jobe has enough trust from the coaching staff to keep Hood off the field early on when they're in that preferred big nickel set, but he could lead them to put 3 corners on the field more regularly again this season when facing 11 personnel, or maybe even use Nick Gimmonwori as a dime back on all these passing downs. That does it for picks 1 through 32. You can look at them all on your screen right now again. At this moment, I really think it's 50-50 if Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson goes in round 1, and I thought about having a team like the Cardinals trade back in late here, but I didn't want to take any selections away from the teams here, and I didn't want to ignore the fans of teams without a first round pick either, so let's run through one selection for each of them a little bit quicker here. Even though they made me rewrite some things and overhaul the graphics, it was so nice to also include the Cincinnati Bengals here, with pick 41, and after selecting Chase Besantes, the interior O-lineman out of Texas A&M. They already made that huge investment with Dexter Lawrence as the new rock in the middle of the defense, not only to address the biggest weak spot on offense and help protect Joe Burrow. Battle-tested guard from the SEC with 36 career starts, yet won't even turn 22 years old for a couple more months. His pad level to first contact could be better in the run game, and he's too often put into recovery modes by oversetting on big-gap rushers, but he has the flexible lower half to still win the rep, which is huge in the NFL. He has those boxing skills in pass pro, and you love all the different assignments he can take on as a puller. Since he likes Dylan Fairchild at day 2 selection from him last year, and Dalton Risner is at least a serviceable player at this stage, but he and the starting center in the final years of the contract, and nothing that keeps me from at least adding some competition and trying to find one of the most high potential guards in this class. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts at 47, after them going with Anthony Hill Jr., the linebacker out of Texas. Other than Akeem Davis-Gaither and Jalen Carlis as this converted safety, there's not really much left on the roster after they allowed E.J. Speed to walk and Jermaine Pratt still being a free agent. Hill will have a lot to learn in Lou Anarumo's versatile defensive scheme, but safety Cam Bynum is the green dot guy for this group anyway, and this guy has all the tools to become a freeway impact player. Gifted lateral mover with sudden hands to keep his frame clean and wrap up the runner. Does get drawn up a lot at this point by play action, but can really flood the field in zone coverage and make it tough to float the ball with his head. Has impressive fluidity to be a two-way threat as a pass rusher, and he massively cut down on missed tackles last season. Right after that, at pick 48, the Atlanta Falcons go with Lee Hunter, the interior defensive lineman out of Texas Tech. They don't have a real nose on the roster. I was going to say that Ruka Rororo is currently slated to start there, before he suddenly was traded for another D tackle from the Jags on Friday, after they traded up for the former in the second round 2 years ago. But both guys were primarily 4-eye/5 techniques in college either way. Hunter will need to work on his technique rather than absorb double teams the way he was able to in college, but also kind of a dancing bear to elude back blocks and pull linemen off himself to create stops. He really needs to learn to keep his pads down, but if he does, he can take guys for a ride with the bull rush, and once he gets to one shoulder of the rip, it's pretty much over. 3 picks later, the Green Bay Packers go with Gabe Jacques, the edge defender out of Illinois. GM Brian Gutekunst and those guys are always looking to beef up in the trenches. After trading Rashawn Gary to Dallas especially, they have a bunch of these weird body types with inside flexibility in Carl Brooks and a couple of favorite picks from last year. Jacques fits in that mold, where he played between 260 and like 285 pounds at different points, based on what the Atlanta asked of him. But he was at his best this past year as more of a traditional stand-up outside backer. He's a badass run defender who shoots his hands, rolls his hips, locks out, and frequently pulls the opposite arm over to wrap up the ball carrier, trying to cut up inside of him. Another guy who needs to be more intent with threatening up the field, even if he ultimately wants to convert speed to power, and access counters more reliably, but impressive get-off, refuses to give up, and can be a big-time asset on different twist action. Then at 56 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I have them going with another linebacker and Jack Goldie from Cincinnati, trying to replace Devin Lloyd as the long playmaking second-level player alongside Foyer Luakun. Very much built like a traditional linebacker, but actually primarily lined up as that overhang defender for the Cincy defense, whose athleticism pops off the screen. There'll be a learning curve reading the game inside out, but the lines to meet pulling linemen and blow things up are clearly there. Offers a ton of range and active eyes as a zone defender, even though his longer legs lead to some redirection issues in the open field sporadically, and you do see him dip and rip to win the corner against tackles. So he's an interesting prospect for Jags DC Anthony Campanile to maybe diversify the looks they present on passing downs. And let's finish up with the fun one for the Broncos at 62. After Sean Payton wanted to get his joker last year, I tried to connect him with a tight end free agency already. After Evan Ingram never quite established himself as the key piece for them last year, let's give them Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. Could easily go a little earlier, but the sicko that I am, I actually went for the exercise of doing a full 2-round mock draft to get to this point. The tight end label is a funny one with Stowers, because he was only in line for about a third of the offensive snaps, and even then it was largely as a wing, but has some nice moments washing down C-gap defenders and gliding up to the second level, and they're really drafting him to be a weapon as an oversized receiver, can legitimately put safeties on the heels with that acceleration of the line, roll through speed cuts or drop those hips and separate on whip routes and stuff like that. Less than a 4% career drop rate, and can really climb the ladder with that record-setting 45.5-inch vertical, can occasionally lose focus with someone on his hips, but that speed and ability to pull through tackles shows up after the catch. And that brings us to the end of this video and puts a bow on draft coverage for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this mock draft and want to see more of my content, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. You can find all of my positional rankings over at HelloSoFootballtalk.com. Really encourage you to check that out if you want to inform yourself some more. I'd put my scouting reports up there with just about anyone, and my last video before this should pop up here any second, talking about some of my guys who I like better than consensus in this draft. Let me know what you thought of these picks, maybe for your own predictions in the comments. Feel free to follow me on social media for all my thoughts during draft weekend and beyond. Links to all of that are down below in the description, and hoping to hear from you guys soon. So until then, see you later. Peace!